Hello, hello, greetings, and welcome to Storytime with Stephanie. Storytime with Stephanie is a platform where we give new and independent authors an opportunity to share their powerful stories of transformation and healing to a wide range of audiences. Storytime with Stephanie airs on the second and fourth Monday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern. And you can catch the replays on our YouTube channel at It's Story Time with Stephanie. You can visit us and watch all of our past seasons, and we're now on season 6. And tonight we have an amazing guest with us. We have Darryl Clack, who is the author of Hear My Story Before I Forget. And when I heard that title, I immediately said, oh yeah, I definitely want to be able to hear this story. So Darryl, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm blessed. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad to have you. I want to share a little bit of your bio, and then I want you to kind of just tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you are today, and we're going to dive into your book.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. So you were inducted in the 2006 Colorado Springs Hall of Fame and the Colorado High School Hall of Fame in 1993. You began your college football career at Arizona State University in the 1982 season, becoming the first freshman to lead the Sun Devils in rushing in 30 years. That's an accomplishment. Your freshman season culminated in the Devils' victory over Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, where you scored a third quarter touchdown. And even as a freshman, your popularity galvanized Arizona State fans to the extent that metal noisemakers known as Darryl Clackers was sold by stadium vendors. You got your own metal clackers?
Yeah. Can you believe it?
That is hilarious. Now, you excelled at Arizona State, and then you continue to have honor after honor. You were then drafted to the Dallas Cowboys in the 1986 NFL Draft to be the backup and possible successor to Tony Dorsett. But when Herschel Walker arrived to the team, you had to kind of take a back seat to
Yes.
Herschel, right? But you still remained on the
That's
team
correct.
and still had an amazing time. But you then signed with the Cleveland Browns in 1990.
1 second. Right here just went out. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, I'll keep sharing so the people will know exactly about your background. In 1991, he was signed by the Toronto Argonauts of the Canadian Football League, where he played in the Grey Cup championship game. In 1992, he signed with the Orlando Thunder of the World League of American Football and became the team starter at running back and received all World League honors at the end of the season. But after football, you buckled down. You got your BA in kinesiology and sports studies. You got a Master of Arts in Organizational Management from the University of Phoenix. And you spent a number of years working in the corporate world. Then you no longer played football, but you kept on working. And now you're the president and co-founder of Sportmetric, along with co-founders Josh Jakubczak, sorry if I mispronounced his name, and Darius Perry. This company emphasizes education, community involvement, and athletics for youth. And so, Darryl, can you hear us now? You still can't hear us? Okay. All right, bear with us. Darryl's getting his earphone connected again. And while he does that, just to share a little bit about his book, Hear My Story Before I Forget. This is the story, a traumatic journey of a former NFL player battling a rare blood disease and early stage dementia. But he is able to find renewed strength in Christ. And we're going to learn all about his powerful story, one that really will bring you to tears once we get a chance to talk about it. Darryl, can you hear us yet? Not just yet. Okay. For those of you who are live with us watching, feel free to share this out so that others can join us and hear Darryl's powerful story. Any luck, Darryl? See, we know the enemy is always busy trying to operate. He does not want Darryl to be able to share this story. But here's what I will share with you. Hear my story before I forget. Chronicles Darryl Clack's celebrated sports journey, his coping mechanisms for multiple concussions, PTSD and depression, and journals the dark months of uncertainty that followed his traumatic illness and his fight to live. Darryl, can you hear me now?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, I can hear you. Excellent.
Okay.
All right. I was
Technical
filling in some, that's okay. I was filling in some gaps there for you while we waited. So we're so glad to have you. And so, having shared your background, I want you to kind of tell us a little bit more about who Darryl is, what you've experienced. We talked about the fact that you know, played formally in the NFL. Now you've been a successful businessman and you also have your own company as well. Tell us a little bit more about who Darryl is before we begin to talk about your book.
Well, you know, the funny thing about that is Darryl has always been an athlete. You know, my entire life it's always been football, track, you know, some sports. So that's always been pretty much my identity. You know, just sports, 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 sports. You
Yeah.
know, and then growing up as a kid, I never had just a regular job because I was always doing sports,
Right.
and so that's all I knew. And then so you know, once football ended, then it's to that period where I had to find out who I really am outside of playing football, playing sports. And that was the part that was a big challenge, was trying to figure that out. What was going to be my plan B? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and so you know, I kind of like went through a period of trying to figure out what I want to do in life, what I want to do outside of football, and you know, just kind of adapted, and just finished up my college education. Figured out that was the best way to start with getting my college education and my master's and so forth. And so, and then from that point on, once I got into working in corporate world, that kind of that kind of groomed me to say, okay, this is Darryl now. You know, I'm the kind of person now that, you know, I've learned a lot from sports. You know, I've created and got some good habits from sports.
Mm-hmm.
You know how to have strong work ethic and dedication and just working hard. And so from that point on, I was like, okay, now that I'm in the real world,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, now let's show what really Darryl is all about.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So that from that point on is when it kind of took off to say, okay, you know, I come across, meet a lot of good people and just kind of put a lot of different ideas in my head and just kind of like groomed me to say, okay, this could be what you are meant to do and meant to be going forward outside of playing sports.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're at from this point on, where I got into corporate America, started my own business, things of that nature, and just kind of just grew myself to wanting to help people, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and whatever it is, whether it's helping them train, whether it's helping them sports, whether it's in corporate America, you know, just grooming people to get better and do things and experience life and just do everything positive standpoint. That's Darryl.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my parents raised me to be a giving person, you know, and that's kind of like when I got to football, they kind of took away from that because that was all I was focused on, was just playing sports
Mm-hmm.
and trying to be successful at that. And I kind of got away from that. But once I got out of sports, maybe that was just a blessing in disguise to say, okay, now your career is over. Now let's get to the point where this is why you're here.
Yeah.
And so I like grown myself to just to give and give and give and help as many people I can, even if it's just one person, you know,
Yeah.
just help them out. And, you know, and that's Darryl. That's Darryl in today's world.
I love it. I love it. And so, being that you pretty much played sports all the way from childhood, take us back to, you know, that time where you went to your parents and you decided you wanted to play football and you wanted to play track. And in reading your story, you told your parents you were going to play for the Dallas Cowboys. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm originally from Texas, so I grew up as a Cowboy kid, right? All my life, Dallas Cowboys, Dallas Cowboys. And so as time, you know, I started football, tackle football in the fifth grade. And, you know, short story is that there was a period when I first started, I didn't like football. I hated
Really?
football. Yeah, I would rather run track than football.
Mm.
And so when I first tried out for youth tackle, I quit. And, my dad's a military man. He said, well, son, I paid for this. You're going to do this. So get back out there and continue what you started. And thank God I did it, and I grew to love it,
Mhm.
and that's kind of just off from that point. And so as years went, youth football, junior high, high school, there's some success there. I saw some success, and I was doing pretty good at it, and I started to really enjoy it, and it just got to the point where by the time I got to high school, it was there like, okay, there's some possibility I could do something with this game of football.
Mhm.
And but it was a bit of a challenge because my dad was military, so we traveled. We had to move every two years to different
Okay.
locations. By the time I was in high school, he had to go to Germany, and so my parents made a decision. He would stay. He would go to Germany, and we would stay at the time in Colorado, so I can finish high school there and continue with my sports. There's a sacrifice
Yeah.
that they made for me to continue sports.
Mhm.
That's when I said, Mom, because you guys sacrificed so much for me, then that time when my goal, and I hope that I can get to the point where I can get in the NFL, play the Dallas Cowboys, this is what I'm gonna do for you and Dad. And
And
God bless me, and it happened.
I love that because you basically spoke it into existence. You said this was what you wanted to do, and you ended up doing exactly that. And you said you wanted to buy them a house and a car,
Yeah.
and you were able to
Yep.
do exactly that.
I was able to do it. First thing I did.
I see. I love that. You didn't even do anything for yourself first. You took care of your parents first
I
because
lived, I lived, I lived in an apartment. I bought them a house, them a car. I moved into an apartment my first year playing NFL.
you definitely are a giver. I saw Phyllis put up a message saying that you definitely are a giver. So I can tell you have a giver's heart. Now, tell us a little bit, because you said in the book that you actually got your first concussion. Was it when you were in the 5th grade?
Fifth grade. Yeah, that's when I first started youth football,
Okay.
tackle football. Fifth
Mhm.
grade, and at the time, the position I played was quarterback.
Okay.
And so, at that time, it was more like a running type quarterback, run pass type deal. And I took a hit on the sideline, and that's my first experience of having a concussion. Now, keep in mind, in fifth grade, we don't know what that is, right?
Right.
And I don't know why I can't remember. They ask me questions and I can't remember. They ask me what's your mom's name, your dad's name, and I can't remember their
Yeah.
names. And as a in the kids in the fifth grade, just imagine how that would feel.
Mhm.
It was really scary for me. Like, how come I can't remember my dad's name, my mom's name?
Wow.
And so that was my first experience, and it was a very scary experience I've never forgotten and I never will forget. And that's kind of what transitioned, everything now in today's world about concussions. And
Mhm.
so that's what it started.
And so now you've gone through, 5th grade, you've gone through high school, you are a star athlete in high school, and then you shifted on to college. And I saw that your first choice was Notre Dame.
Yes.
And my nephew, he played at Notre Dame. So I was like, oh, his first choice was Notre Dame. That's so exciting. But you decided not to go because of the snowstorm that hit when you were supposed to go
Yeah.
visit.
Yes. So keep in mind, I'm in Colorado, snow, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, let me go to Notre Dame. It's a good school, great school, got tradition there. I'm in the
Yes.
airport in Denver and there's a blizzard.
You're like, forget
I'm
that.
on the phone like, hey, we got to go out west. So I changed my mind. I'm not going there. I want some sunshine from that point.
Oh my God. So you chose to go to Arizona State instead. And
Yes,
you had
yes,
a very successful career there, but that's when you really started to experience some major injuries, right? So walk
yes,
us through a
yes.
little bit about your time there and some of the things that you experienced physically, as a team member with Arizona State.
Well, okay, so college is a different level. It's a much higher level. Everybody is, the top notch of the best, and so, and we played top notch colleges, Southern Cal's, UCLA's, the Floridas, Oklahoma's, Oklahoma States, Florida States, all the Stanford's, well, played all those teams, and and that level, it's top notch, and so just as good I was in high school, those same kind of kids from the high schools were there with me at
Yes.
ASU or at the university. So the level is greater, the impact is bigger, the hits are bigger, and the kids are stronger and faster. And so, as a running back, just imagine I'm taking hits day in and day out, day in day out. And keep in mind, back in that time when we practice with contact every day. So every day we're hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting each other, full speed. And so that takes its toll on your body. I
Yeah.
don't care, it just takes a toll and your body starts to break down. And so because of that, I started to get a lot of injuries, and whether it's ankle injuries, I've had cracked ribs, I've had separated shoulders, concussions. I still had concussions in college as well. And so all that takes its toll on your body. And there's injuries that I had that I never even mentioned. They never knew about it, and so I just played with pain regardless, and so from that point on, that's the start where, okay, now your body's being broken down, and and if you don't take the time off to heal, it never heals. And at that time, I didn't take the time off. I kept playing. And so a lot of my injuries never healed, and so, went until, probably toward the end of the year where I missed my last year at ASU because I got a separated leg, and so that kept me out the whole entire season, so it was one thing after another. But that's just the nature of the game. That's how we know the game is back then.
And the thing too is that you were just so disciplined. I mean, coming up in a military household where you're just disciplined and you just continue to press through, you just made that decision to fight through the pain, continue to play through the pain regardless. You talked about a game where you were playing against UCLA, and you said you took a handoff up the middle and took a hit on the back of your head. You said you remember getting up and walking to the huddle. Your quarterback called the next play, and you had no clue as to what you were doing. So you asked the quarterback, "What do I do?" He told me what to do. But then after you went back to the huddle and the quarterback called another play, the same thing happened. You were asking him like what to do because you didn't know what to do. And at that point, your quarterback became concerned, right?
Yes.
Because he realized
Yes.
something had to be wrong for you not to
That's
remember the plays. And so tell us a little bit about what was happening there.
So that was a period when we played, it's UCLA in the Rose Bowl, and took a handoff, went to middle, got hit in the back of the head, and I just got up, and I know once I got up, there were stars, I'd see stars, and I'm looking around, and I was like, where am I? And so, but because I played the game so much,
Yeah.
just your natural ability starts kicking in. So because you're just so used to doing everything continuously. So I just walked right back to the huddle. He called the play. I had no clue what that play was or what to do. Just like that. And I've been doing this for forever. And so I asked him, hey, I don't know what to do. Tell me what I got to do. So he tells me to do. I go do it. Come back, repeat again. I go and I go do it. And even just take a handoff and run the ball.
Yeah.
I just go do it, but not knowing what I'm doing. And so the third time, same thing happened. He calls a play, and then still didn't know. He's waving, and he calls a timeout and say, y'all need to come, and something's wrong with Darryl. And then so the trainers came, they took me to the sideline and examined me, did my eye dilate, all that kind of stuff, realized I had a concussion. I didn't realize I had a concussion, but I was just kept playing and being that fact that I didn't know the play. I didn't say, hey, something's wrong with me.
Right.
Well, I didn't tell them, hey, something's wrong with me. I just wanted to keep playing, and so it took him to realize something's not right, as opposed to going on, because I was studying that game, the entire game, and kept asking what I got to do that the whole time, just for fact that because I just wanted to play and didn't want to leave the game.
And the sad thing is and there's so many other players like that, Darryl, who will do the same thing. They don't want to share that something could be wrong. They don't even want to know that something's wrong. They just want to keep playing. And so what
Right.
happens is continue to play through concussions, continuing to play through pain, and then your body just becomes broken down. And so later you shared that you did have the separated leg, and that's what took you out for an entire season at that point,
Yes,
right?
that's
And
correct.
then
Yeah.
where were you in your college football career at that point? Were you already in your third or fourth year?
So when I broke my leg, it was my fourth year.
Okay.
My fourth year, and so as at the rule is like if you like I could have stayed the next year. What they call medical hardship
Right.
because I wasn't redshirted as a freshman. I played as a freshman.
Okay.
So from that standpoint, I had an extra year that I could actually use to stay an additional year because I got injured.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was called a medical hardship, but I decided not to do that.
And so you bypassed the medical hardship and you said, I'm just going
Mhm.
to go ahead and go to the NFL draft.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
going to
Due to
bypass.
circumstances,
Say it
yes,
again.
I made that choice. Due to certain circumstances, I made that choice.
Yeah. And so here it is, all this pain your body has endured, and you decided, you know what? I'm not going to go medical hardship. I'm not going to do the fifth year. I'm just going to enter into the draft. And you were chosen to
Yes,
play for the Dallas Cowboys, second pick in the second round draft, right?
that's correct. That's correct.
I
Surprising,
know,
right?
right? I'm like,
Yeah, I'm surprised too.
I was like, God was really on your side, Darryl, because wow.
Very much so. And let me throw something at you that I probably hadn't mentioned to it before, but prior to me going into the draft,
Mhm.
the Cowboys had came to my agent and said, "Hey, see if you convince Darryl to stay in the NFL ASU one more year."
Mm.
Because at that time, they knew things I didn't know, and so they said, "Well, if he can stay in another year, and then when that next year come up, then we can get him in with the Cowboys." So they try to make that deal with my agent,
Okay.
and I still took that chance anyway. And so
Mm.
when my time came up, what they did was they made a trade. One of their players, they traded them to the Green Bay Packers because the Green Bay Packers was when they had my pick for me to go to Green
Okay.
Bay. Dallas made a trade with Green Bay. That's how I ended up got to get into Dallas.
Oh, look at that.
So, they I guess they really wanted me at the time,
Yes.
but so it worked out. Yeah, it worked out,
So you
but
got to
so
fulfill this dream. Go ahead.
yes, it was a dream. It was just God just blessed me right then and there with a dream come true. All my life, Dallas Cowboys.
And so what was that experience like? Because you mentioned that here it was, yeah, Erica says, look at God. Yes. Here it was. You had an opportunity to play for the team that from childhood you said, I'm going to play for the Dallas Cowboys. You enter into the draft. You end up getting chosen, drafted to be a part of the Dallas Cowboys. And then you go into the Cowboys with high expectations, right?
Yes,
And tell us
yes.
about some of the experiences that you had that may not have been exactly what you desired it to be, but still ended up being a blessing for you anyway.
Well, the thing about it is because at that time, Tony Dorsett was probably on the tail end of his career. I mean, he's still successful as a tail end of his career. And and keep in mind, I'm a Dorsett fanatic as a kid. He was my favorite player.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got to Dallas, I'm going in the locker room, Dorsett sitting right there in the locker, and I'm like,
Wow.
you know, and so he said, come over here. And so I got to meet him, and he kind of groomed me and, talked to me about the NFL and the organization. It's that because the plan was for me to be his successor once he left,
Mm-hmm.
whenever he decided to leave. But at that time, Herschel Walker decides to come out of the USFL, and Dallas had its rights. So now Herschel Walker's there. So now I'm like, oh wow. Well, now I'm like behind 2 Heisman Trophy winners, and so it was that put me in 3rd spot basically, but I didn't get discouraged about that, because the reason was because I understood how it works, understood the process, but I also realized that I'm blessed just to be there.
Yes.
And so I was happy to be a part of the organization, be part of the team. So whatever I need to do, whatever the team wanted me to do at the time, then I'm all for it, And so at that time, they said, okay, you'll be a kickoff returner, and I'll do special teams. And then as if injuries come up or whatever with Dorsett or Herschel, then I would get in and get some playing time.
Okay.
I understood that and I accepted that.
Okay.
I wasn't one of those players like, no, I'm not going to do that, blah, blah, blah. No, I accepted and understood it, just how it turned out. I'm just happy to be there, and so that's kind of how, that was the side that really was, I didn't expect that to happen. And so when it happened, I was, a little discouraged at the beginning, but I got over it and just kind of like sat back, evaluated, said, look, I didn't play my last year in college.
Yeah.
So I'm here with a team that I love and a team that I wish to be on. So there's a reason why I'm here. So just make the best of it. And that's kind of what I did. I made the best of it.
Yeah.
However it turned out, I was fine with it.
Now, you did get a chance. Your first game was in London, you said, against 1985 Super Bowl champs Chicago Bears. And in that game is where you sustained a massive injury to your shoulder.
Separated shoulder.
Yep. Separated your shoulder.
Separated shoulder.
And you continue to play the whole year, this separated shoulder that would have
crazy, right?
popped back in. And I'm like, how much more could you endure, Darryl? I just was reading the book and I'm like, look, I was highlighting like, oh, all this stuff. I'm like, what would possess anyone to like beat their body up like that and continue to go? But you just had a will and a drive and a determination that was really unmatched. I mean, from childhood up until that point, where regardless of what you were experiencing, you were going to keep on going no matter what. And I think that the teams that you played for, they saw that, they recognized that in you, because even after you left the Cowboys, because there was a trade with the coaches. So who was it? Jerry Jones, at that time purchased the Cowboys, and then Jimmy Johnson from University of Miami became the new head coach. And so at that point, that's where you saw your dreams of the Cowboys kind of go out the door.
That's correct. Yeah. And so, but the funny thing about that is during that 4-year period I was with Dallas, the San Diego Chargers reached out to Dallas to do a trade for me to come to San Diego. But because at that time free agency wasn't available, the Dallas Cowboys declined it for me to stay in Dallas. So I had an opportunity, if they would let me go, to go to San Diego and start my career there in San Diego. But they kept me there, but then they didn't know that the team was going to be sold. So it's like one of those things like, wow, dang if you do, dang if you don't, but it is what it is. It turned out to how it turned out. And so, but at that time, because I knew what the situation was, I wanted to go to San Diego and start my career, because there was a better opportunity there, because as long as Herschel was there, then I was always going to be a backup.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to go to San Diego, but they wouldn't release me in Dallas to go to San Diego. So I was stuck in Dallas.
That sucks. But it still turned out in your favor. So tell us a little bit about what happened after your time with Dallas ended. Where did you go from there?
So when that ended, I did some tryouts. I went and did a tryout with the Philadelphia Eagles, the Miami Dolphins, and then the Cleveland Browns. And then the Cleveland Browns offered me the best contract. And so I ended up going to Cleveland. All right. I get to Cleveland during preseason. Once again, I'm playing, everything's going okay. Then all of a sudden, another injury happens, and this is my ankle and my knees.
Good.
And so I was like, okay, it's been injuries after injuries at every level. that I played sports, and so at a certain point as an athlete, you kind of get like frustrated, and you get to the point where, okay, now how much more am I going to keep dealing with these injuries?
Yeah.
And then it took a doctor to sit there and tell me, if you keep doing this, at some point you're gonna be riding a wheelchair or walking on a walker. So you need to think about getting out of the game and so forth. And so, being stubborn, I was like, I'm just, mentally, emotionally, I just wasn't ready to give up the game yet, And so, I just kind of stuck through it. And then after in the preseason, they let me go at the last cut of the preseason. So let me go because I was still injured. And so they let me go at that point. And remember, it's always a rule in the NFL, because it's a business. If you're not on the field, you don't keep your job.
Right.
And that was the mindset. If you get injured, find some way to stay on that football field, because as soon as you're off that football field, you can lose your job.
Yeah.
And that was the mindset that when I first got to Dallas, that's what Tony Dorsett told me. He said, look, this is a business now. It's not college. They're paying you this money. You got to be on this field. And if you're not on this field, you'll lose your job. They'll give it to somebody else. And I always remember too that the older you get, the younger ones are coming in behind you.
Yeah.
And so the mindset was stay on the field. No matter what kind of injury you got, stay on. So that's why I played with a separated shoulder. That's why I try to fight through the knee injuries and ankle injuries, because of that, And so that's part of my mindset.
Oh, so at that point you said, okay, look, injury after injury. Now I'm going to be leaving Cleveland Browns. I think I'm just going to go ahead and end my career, but it didn't end there.
It didn't end. So I got a call from the Canadian Football League, asked me if I had any interest coming there to play running back. And I was like, well, okay. I didn't say no. I said, yeah, for sure, I'll come. Next day, I was on a flight going to Canada.
Broken, separated shoulder, broken knees. I'm still going to go ahead and go play in Toronto.
Yeah, so I played.
Yeah, you played, and it ended up being a great experience for you.
Great experience, and got a Grey Cup championship there. And so it was well worth it. And then at that point, okay, I said, all right, I'm done. I got me a championship. I made it through, so I'm done. So I'm on my way back to Texas. And as soon as I get to Texas, I get another phone call from another coach. Say, hey, the NFL's got this called the NFL World League out. I'm on our team and play running back. So
come on over here to Orlando.
Orlando. I went back home a week before I was packed up on my way to Orlando. Still banged up, and sustained injuries there, but we had a successful season. I did well. I led the team in rushing. I was all world, and we ended up going to what we call the World Bowl. We lost it, but we was run up, and so we had a great season. I was selected as all world league honors and everything. But during that process, I still was having injuries. And then once again, another doctor came to me and said, look, you keep this up, seriously, you're going to end up on a walker or a wheelchair. So, okay, I got you. And at that point, I realized I had to shut down, because during that season, in order for me to be able to practice, I had to keep taking all kind of pain pills and injections and stuff, just for me to be able to deal with the pain and practice and play in the football game. And I had to do that the entire season. That's what really woke me up and said, okay, I'm done. Because it got to the point where, I'd wake up and I was like, I got to go to practice. And I just feel miserable. I feel horrible. My body hurts. I get there, I'm taking pain pills and all kind of stuff. And just to get to practice, that's not a way to be. And so I kind of shut it down. That was my, for sure, shutdown.
Yes, you finally ended your football career with the Orlando Thunder. And then you had to figure out what was next, because most of your life had been about sports, had been about football. And now you needed a plan B, because football was no longer your life. And so you decided with your broken body that you were going to go ahead and go ahead and get your degree. You were going to enter the workforce, and you were going to really just kind of start your life over, because you were starting to see that, you know, things were different from you. You said you started to gamble because you were kind of in a low place. So tell us about kind of what happened at that point, because you wanted to reboot your life, but what brought you to the place of starting to gamble?
It was more of, I went through a period of depression because I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea. I had no clue what I was going to do. I didn't have no work experience. I didn't have none of that. And so, but then there was a period too where, as an athlete, we're so used to the roars and the yelling and screaming, and people calling your name and this and that. And that's how we're groomed all our life, you know, and that's what we're so used to, having that rush. And that rush was gone when I started playing. And so that's kind of when I started gambling to get that rush back. And so I would gamble to get that rush back, you know. And so during that period, he's like, okay, you know, this ain't working. You know, you still, you know, going through depression. You're still not feeling, you know, there's a void that's missing. I got to figure this out, you know, somehow, some way, you know. And I remember my mom telling me, she goes, son, you need to get back in church, because I got away from church. Right. And so I said, okay. So I get back in church, saying my prayers to God, reaching out for help, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing that popped up was get back in school, get your degree. So I went back to college. I finished my degree. I got my master's degree. And then from that point on, it's just like there's a bell that clicked in my head and said, okay, all right, you got your degree. You know, you have some education now. Now let's start doing something. All right. So I applied for, I looked and said, okay, now what is it that I could do that I know what to do, which is dealing with sports. So I applied for a company called Norditrek. So, which is sport equipment, showing people how to work out on sports equipment. That's my first job I applied for.
That was perfect.
Yeah, but here's the catch. The role was a sales manager position. I never been before. I had never had no sales job before. I had no job before. So I don't know what I was thinking.
But you knew sports equipment, and that's all you needed.
Yeah, I didn't know at the time, you know. But when I applied for it, he said, I told him I was honest with him, and this is what clicked in me that made my whole corporate America mindset change. He said, you play professional football. You've been playing football all your life, right? I said, yes. He said, so what did football teach you? I said, He said, it taught you discipline, taught you work ethic, taught you how to work hard, train. You know, it taught you all these little things that you realize that goes forward in the workforce. And, you know, and so he said, by that, I'm going to hire you as my sales manager, because that's the kind of person I want to lead my team. You're a team leader. You know how to be part of a team. You know how to communicate. You know how to get people going and push and motivate and this and that. Those are good job characteristics.
Yes.
I didn't realize it then, but he's the one that actually changed my whole mindset on that. And that's when that was the start of me working in corporate America. And so he hired me as a sales manager. First job.
See, that's the amazing thing. You don't even recognize all of the qualities that you attained by playing football, the discipline, the leadership, you know, and you were able to take all of those things and translate them into your first corporate career that then literally took over, because you were able to work for some major companies time after time. And you ended up working for a residential treatment center where, because of that giving heart, that giving spirit, you were able to, you know, give back by doing that type of work as well. But I want to fast forward to when you began to experience some of the they were physical challenges, but you were also beginning to experience, losing focus, and you weren't able to remember certain things. I want us to kind of fast forward to there and tell us, what was that first experience? What was going on with you?
So at that time, I was here and I had got hired on as a at the time it was a bank in the banking world.
Mhm.
They hired me in as a assistant vice president in charge of customer service for a bank out here. It's called Compass Bank at the time.
Compass Bank. Hmm.
And so I ended up working for this bank for about 14, 15 years, 13 years, I think, 13 years. And so, but as time went on and as I got older during this process, there's a period where I started to like forget little things, just the little things that I'm supposed to know, and or forget numbers. Now, keep in mind in banking, you have to know you have to know numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to forget certain things. It was just little bits and pieces, but I noticed it because I should know this because I knew it before. How come I'm forgetting it?
Right.
I had to do like a lot of training sessions. I had to coach people. I had to train people. And so during that period, there was information that I actually start to forget, just gradually, but just start to forget. But I know I knew it, but I'm like, why am I forgetting this? You know,
Mm.
and I didn't understand why at all. And so it took a point where during that time, I think it was 2011, when the NFL was going through a period where we were suing the NFL for concussions settlement.
Yes.
I had never been tested prior to that, and I got tested. That's when I started getting tested and
Mm.
realized they were saying, okay, now you have early stage of dementia. You don't have dementia, but
Right.
you got early stage dementia. That's where your memories come into effect, where you start to forget
Mhm.
things. You just start to just have like little small things that are out of the norm that you were normally used to, but you start to gradually lose that a little bit. And that was the
And
start
you
of
were
that.
and you were experiencing dizziness and migraines and all that as well. And so you ended up getting an MRI, and that's when you were diagnosed with early stage dementia.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
And how did that impact your life, your family? And I ask because, everyone's experience is different. My mother has dementia, and she has for the past 14 years, and she's now kind of in the end stages of it, and it's
Okay.
been a journey. So
Yeah.
how did that impact you and your family when that diagnosis came in?
It impacted a lot because we didn't understand it. I didn't
Mm.
understand it. I didn't know what it was all about. I had never heard of it too much and never did research on it. And so I would have like little mood swings. I would kind of go through like an isolation period where I was like just be isolating myself. I could sit there and just watch some television, and my dog said, "Dad," my wife at the time would say, "Dad, you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why?" So because you just glaring and staring at the TV, not even moving, just glaring and staring at the TV, no reason. I didn't realize I was even doing that. So it kind of impacted them a lot because they didn't know what was going on, and at that time, it was like dad or because I was married at times, my wife at the time would think, well, maybe it's because I'm distancing myself from the marriage or from
Mm.
the family. There's other stuff going on. It wasn't. They didn't know anything about it, so they thought maybe I'm just going elsewhere.
Yeah.
Not really focused on the marriage and the family. And it wasn't. They didn't realize that. And it took a period of time to where we would start having problems. And if she would tell me to do something or ask me to do something, I would say, okay. Next thing you know, I never did it.
Yeah.
And so now there's a problem. Why did she do this? She didn't do it.
Yeah.
Well, oh, okay. So now we're starting having some marital problems because of that. I didn't know what I was doing. She didn't understand why I was doing it. She thought I'm just being difficult.
Mm.
And um, it took her brother and her father to sit there and tell her that you need to understand that he's had a lot of blows to his head, and that's starting to affect him.
Yeah.
And that kind of was a red light, like, oh, okay. Now I start going getting checked now at that point. Now I got to go start seeing doctors, getting all these neurological tests done, and just trying to figure out what's going on, what's causing it. And that was the start of everything regarding concussions and my field because of concussions.
And because you sustained your first concussion in the 5th grade, you end up saying if you combine all the hits to your head, that totals to about 15 years of head trauma from contact football. And as a result of this constant head trauma, that's how you sustain some of those symptoms that undoubtedly led to this early stage dementia. And I want you to talk a little bit to the parents of kids who are playing contact sports. And I know things have changed significantly from the time that you were a child, even through, the years that you played in the league. I know things are different now, but what are some of the things in your book? And I'll reset by sharing, Hear My Story Before I Forget by Darryl Clack. I will say this book is so full of information. It's not just your story. It is combined with research. It's combined with tips. I mean, I was like, God, this is a great book for people who need to know about what to do in the event of a concussion. How do you determine if there's a concussion? What are some of the things you can do to prevent a concussion? But not just that, you go deeply into dementia. You go deeply into PTSD. You go deeply into depression. I'm like, this is amazing, because so many people who might, and Phyllis, she's doing 100 claps, people who might be experiencing some of these different symptoms of any of these things that we've touched on so far, they could look at themselves and say, wow, you know what? I've experienced some of these things, but I didn't know why. And maybe I do need to get checked. So I want to applaud you, Darryl, for going that deeply into each of these things. And I encourage people, especially parents with kids in contact sports, to get this book, because I think it's a game changer. And I definitely thank you for being this transparent and for not just sharing your story, but giving detailed research and detailed information for people to understand. And so I want to be able to, I have to say, Darryl, you are truly a fighter. With all that you have endured, not just physically, but then the emotional sides of it as well, and then the mental sides of it as well, and dealing with the early stage dementia. But then you endured something else. You know, you decided you wanted to take a little break. You needed to go on vacation with your family. And here it is. What was it? September of 2016. You started to have these headaches, mild headaches, and you had dark urine that showed up for about a week. And so again, you're thinking, oh, I just need to rest. Not let me go to the doctor and figure out what's going on. Let me rest. Let me take a little vacation with my family. You know, we're going to go over here to Oceanside, California, and I'm going to rest. But your first day of vacation literally changed your life forever.
Forever. Yes.
Forever. Yes.
Forever. Yeah.
So tell us what happened when you were eating lunch with your family on your first day of vacation.
Yeah, so we had got down to California and got settled in and went to the beach and then decided to grab some lunch. And while I'm having lunch, I started to feel real weird to the point where my left arm was getting numb. Didn't understand why I was getting numb, like what's going on, you know. And during the process, you know, I'm getting like to the point where I'm getting woozy, to the point where I'm like trying to doze off. My wife at the time and my daughter was kind of talk to me, and I'm having slurred speech, right? And so there's like, Dad, you okay? And I'm like, I didn't understand what's going on. And then the bill came. So I'm getting ready to sign the credit card, and I couldn't even sign the doggone credit card statement. And so my wife's like, something's wrong, you know. And so she immediately called 911.
Mhm.
And they came, rushed in, and they put me through all my vitals and everything, and said, okay, we take him through a stroke workup. He's having a stroke. So they put me through the workout. They put me in a gurney, put me in an ambulance. I'm in an ambulance, and I'm like, hey, I'm really feeling kind of woozy. What's going on? Blah blah blah. Give me some medicine, and the next thing you know, I pass out. Just dark, just gone. And at that point, I didn't realize what happened to me until 2 days later
Mm.
after I woke up. When I woke up, I thought it was the same day.
Wow.
They sat there and said, no, Mr. Clack, you have been in a coma for 2 days. And I'm
Mm.
like, coma? What are I'm still discombobulated. I'm just woozy and everything. I don't know what's going on. And so the doctor comes in and he tells me that I had been diagnosed with a blood disorder. And what they did was they started giving me some treatments. It's called apheresis treatment, where they put in plasma in my body,
Mhm.
take an old plasma out, put in new plasma in. It's like a blood transfusion, but with
Yeah.
plasma.
Mhm.
But when they first gave it to me, my body rejected it and caused me to have a seizure. And when I had the seizure, that's what put me into a coma. And so I was in a coma for 2 days, and then so that's kind of how the whole process started.
Mhm.
And once I came out of the coma, then they continued to give me that treatment continuously, day in and day out, because based off of my blood disorder, which is pretty new to a lot of hospitals on
Mhm.
how to treat it. A lot of it was trial and error. They just kept giving it to me, kept giving it to me. And that was started actually saving my life, because if they wouldn't have diagnosed me right then and there and started that treatment right then and there, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you today. And so that's the start of what changed my whole world completely around,
Mm.
going forward to today's day. And so
And
I had, I'm sorry, go
let
ahead.
me let me say this really quick, Darryl, because here you were, and you said you were 375 miles from home, and out of all the hospitals in Oceanside, California, you ended up being within a few miles of one that specializes in neurological conditions. You said a coincidence? I think not. The doctors at Tri-City Medical Center diagnosed you quickly. You had acquired, and honestly, I'm usually good with words, but I don't know that I can pronounce all of this. It was
Oh, yeah.
thrombotic,
Bye.
thrombocytopenic
Purpura.
purport.
Purpura. Yeah,
TTP.
purpura.
We're gonna just call it
Oh, no,
T.
TPP. Yeah, yeah. Strong.
How and Phyllis said it for me. All God. That truly was God, because He
Yeah,
still had purpose for you, Darryl. After all you
yeah.
had been through, and here it is, you're on vacation. You experienced this, and Sonia says, "God is so good." All God. Yes. How in the world would that be the hospital you end up going to? And that
Oh,
really was what saved your life.
yes.
All of the things that you had gone through, and now you have to deal with TTP. And
Mhm.
again, here you explain the symptoms of TTP. You break down in such detail what this is. You talk about atypical HUS. What is atypical HUS?
Human Linux syndrome. So it's the same thing as TTP, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so here it is, you give full information in regards to what these illnesses are, what the symptoms are. You talk about the brain, the heart, the kidneys, and the nervous system, because you really want people to understand what could be happening within their bodies, things that could be happening that they don't even know about. Here it was, you were just having some headaches, you were having dark urine, you were dizzy. Sometimes people just think, oh, I just need to rest, like you thought. And here it is, you could actually have a life-threatening illness, a life-threatening disease that, if it's not caught early enough, could actually take your life. But thank God
Yeah.
that was not the case. And thank
Yeah.
God you ended up in a hospital where they were able to take care of you. Now, how long were you in the hospital for them to care for you and do those consistent plasma transfers?
So in California, I was there for 30 days.
Okay.
And then at that point, it was, okay, now what's the next process here for me to get back to Arizona? And so I had decided to, because there's a lot of hospitals in Arizona. So I just decided to say, well, I'm going to go to what they call the Mayo Clinic, which is a top-notch research hospital known nationwide, right? And so we had to figure out how to get me to Arizona. It was a big deal, and so it's I can't fly because of my illness. And what they want to do is, however I got there, they want to make sure there was a nurse with me in case I have some type of relapse or they need to give me some treatment or whatever. So, and at that time, my insurance wouldn't cover an ambulance transfer. So I had to hire a private private ambulance company to transport me. Now, my mom had came down as well, and she's with me. So me and her were in an ambulance driving from California to back to Arizona. And in the ambulance, that's a 7-hour ride. And I'm in a gurney, back of an ambulance for 7 hours. She's right with me, And so I get back to Arizona. We get to everything was set up. And then once I arrived, and I got to give big props to, of course, the Tri-City, but I also got to give big props to the Mayo, because they were so proficient on taking care of me on time, right? So as soon as I arrived, the team was right there, right when I'm coming out of the ambulance.
Wow.
Right there. Everything was already set up. They just wheeled me to my room. The team was there, and they gave me their plan of action, and maybe got to work. And so, big props for them. Big props.
Yeah, Phyllis said that mama is something. Yeah, there's nothing like a mother's love. Yeah, a mother to be ambulance for 7 hours, riding in the back while watching her baby on a gurney. That is truly a mother's love.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so, even after this TTP, your journey did not end there. Sonia says the body will send warnings, but some people ignore them by saying things like, oh, that's just a headache. Oh, that's because I ate something unhealthy. Oh, I think I pulled a muscle, etc. Hashtag pay attention. Pay attention, people. Sonia is an ex-athlete as well. She actually is a former WNBA player, so she knows. She knows. And it's like, we really do have to pay attention. And
the thing about that too is, us as athletes, we ignore that stuff. I could have went and had an examination. It probably would have figured something out by then, but I didn't. I was like, okay, well, got a headache. I get headaches all the time, right? I'm feeling feverish. I get coldness. I get this stuff all the time. What I never got before was dark urine.
Yeah.
And so that was the red flag right there that I ignored.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm just stressed out from work, that my body is just rejecting, or something's coming on my body. So I just need to get some rest and relax. Yeah. So I ignored it, and like she said, going forward, you can't ignore stuff anymore. Even if it's just a small little thing, get it checked out, and so now the little small little thing happens to me, guess where I'm at? I'm
right at the doctor.
Right. We best friends at this point, to the point where I'm calling up at home, I'm something not right. You need to bring me in so I get to check it out. So
I'm glad to hear that.
That's where I'm at now in my life. I'll call you up at home, Doc. What's going on? I'm not feeling good.
I'm glad to hear that. You need to have that type of relationship with your doctor. Yes. And you know what? As a man, to be able to say that, and I want men, and I'm going to be honest, Black men especially, hear Darryl well, hear him good, okay? You need to make sure you go get checked. And honestly, you don't even need to wait until you have a symptom. Just get your annual physical.
Annual physical. I'm talking about all blood work. I'm talking about, if you're a certain age, you need to be checking your colon, your prostate, cancer, cholesterol, everything. That should be done every year. And I'm like clockwork on this thing. Every year. I don't miss a beat.
See,
it's about being proactive versus reactive, And so that's what I'm preaching.
Proactive versus reactive. Thank you for sharing that, Darryl, because people, you need to listen. You need to pay attention. Now, Darryl, I mean, the list of things that you experienced, you then experienced PTSD after all of that. And who wouldn't? Because you had faced what I consider trauma. That's trauma when you endure as much as you did physically, emotionally, mentally, and to be in the hospital for that length of time and to see your family challenged through this, you know, your life just literally changed. It would traumatize anyone. But you leaned on your faith. You continue to trust God. You continue to believe that He would heal you. And He is still in the healing process to this day. And so I want you to be able to kind of have some final words that you would want to share with people in general, but also, again, to parents who have their kids in any type of contact sports.
To start with contact sports, you know, because I do youth football camps out here in Arizona, in certain areas like Texas and so forth, and I do like little focus groups with the parents, and because every parent that their kids playing football assumes that their kid is going to go to the NFL.
Yeah.
Every parent, that's all they want. NFL.
Mm.
They have to understand that less than 1% are going to make it to the NFL. Less than 1%. Okay. And so that's kind of one of the things I emphasize is make sure you, from an education standpoint, they have a plan B. All right. The second part I talk to the parents about is when you're talking about because they come to me and they say, okay, well, you know, Mike, I want my kid to play tackle football.
Mm.
And he's young. He's real young. You know, it could be he's not even junior high school yet. And they want him to play youth tackle football. And I'll sit there and I'll tell them I'm against that. I wouldn't recommend that because number one, they're still at an age where their brain's still developing.
Yeah.
So that constant hit, their brain inside the brain is rallying up against those walls, you know. And because their brain hasn't developed yet, there can be some any ramifications because of that. So do not rush putting your child into contact football.
Yeah.
Have them play flag football. Because what that does is, all it does is develop the skills, which is all you need is the skills. Their position, develop the skills. I wouldn't recommend them until the kid gets to the 9th grade in high school to play youth football. Tackle football. I coached high school for 3 years out here. And not one time during that period that we actually, because the rules changed so much, that we actually do a lot of contact football practice during that period. And so I just recommend just wait to high school. They're not going to miss anything until then. Yeah. And then, so I can talk to them about that as well, you know, because that's important. Let them develop, let the brain develop, and make sure that the coach that's coaching them understands what the rules are and how to coach and develop them as far as proper technique on tackling as well as getting hit. Mm-hmm. So I preach that a lot to the kids and to the parents as well. And so that's probably pretty much my process, my thought process when it comes to tackle football.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. And we've been sharing it across the screen, but I want to say this as well. You can reach Darryl. He's on Instagram at dclack42. He's also on Facebook under his name, Darryl Clack, and that's Darryl with 2 R's, a Y, and an L. You can also visit his website, darrylclack.com, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so there's multiple ways that you can reach out to Darryl to learn more. If you're interested in finding out about his organization, how he can help support. If you have youth that are in contact sports, I would encourage you to reach out to him. And again, buy his book, Hear My Story.
I have another one.
Huh? Oh, you have another one?
I'm working on my second one. It's a continuation.
I love it. So we're going to have you back in another season.
Yes. Yeah, looking forward to it. I'd love to.
Awesome. So Hear My Story, before I forget, you can grab it right from his website. You can go to Amazon.com to get it as well. And I do encourage you again, because it's so, I dropped the book. It's so full of information that will really transform the way you think about illness, transform the way you think about contact sports. And it will really put you in the mindset of saying, I need to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. because just because it ended up well for Darryl doesn't mean it'll end up well for everyone else, right? And so
That's right.
to take those precautions, right? Like he said, to not be reactionary, but to be proactive, that is essential to making sure that you can live a life that's worth living. And so, Darryl, I
Yes.
just want to thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of Storytime with Stephanie. I always have to give out to shout out to Phyllis Cadell of PCPR Communications
Oh
for
yeah, definitely.
reaching out to us about having you on the show. She always sends us some amazing guests. So thank you so much, Phyllis.
Yeah.
And
She's amazing. She's amazing.
yes, she is. So everyone, please go out and get Hear My Story Before I Forget. You want to read it before Darryl's next book comes out, the continuation, so we can find out what's been going on with Darryl since. And so I just want to say thank you so much, Darryl, for being here with us tonight. And
Thank
it's
you
been a
so much for having me.
pleasure. Thank
Appreciate
you,
you.
everyone that has watched us live or will watch on the replay. Darryl, I just want to say thank you so much again. You can hang back with us. I'm going to share
Oh
a
yeah.
couple of things with the people, and then you and I will converse right after. So thank you so much,
Sounds good.
Darryl.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you.
So you can watch Storytime with Stephanie, the replay on our YouTube channel at Storytime with Stephanie. You can also listen to the audio version on all of your major podcasting streaming platforms. And I want to leave us with this quote, actually scripture from the end of Darryl's book. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His faithful love endures forever. And that's First Chronicles 16 and 34. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Be blessed and have a good evening. Bye-bye.